Good morning and happy Friday. Welcome to H3 TV. We're mixing it up this week and we're gathering on Friday instead of our Wednesday, but we're so happy you're here with us. I started H3 TV during COVID when people were stuck at home, and I recognized people need hope, health, and happiness right inside their living room or their office. So now we gather every week and we talk about how do you stay hopeful, healthy, and happy in the midst of the storms, the challenges, the pandemics that sometimes face our life. I want you to know that you're welcome to ask questions throughout. If you are viewing live on LinkedIn, it will show up here. If you ask a question or make a comment after we're live, Julia and I will follow up with you. We'll come back. Please feel free to tag us and we will answer any questions or send you encouragement as we can. Please help me welcome today. My guest is Julia. Hey, Julia. Thanks for being with me.
Thanks. Good morning, Edie. How are you?
Good morning. I am good. I love mornings. Julia, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? Where do you live? What do you do?
Sure. Julia Nicholson. I live in Sacramento, California, and I, for over 20 plus years, was in the corporate world, and a couple years ago decided to leave the corporate world and really share a message that I have on my heart of passion and purpose to help people process change and adversity and hardship and the unpredictable in a positive, productive way.
I love that. I love the positive. I love all the P's, positive and productive. That's awesome, with passion, right?
Yes.
So when this TV show is really about giving people ideas, strategies and ideas. And so when you think of the word storm, what comes to mind for you?
That's a great question, because when I think of a storm, I actually use the word it. And I've kind of started using that word because so many people ask the question, oh my gosh, how long ago did it happen? Or tell me about when it happened. And so I define a storm as anything that happens that you didn't want to happen. You might have tried really hard to make sure it didn't happen. And no matter what you did, it happened anyway. And it could be anything like the death of someone you love, or it could also be the loss of a close relationship or a pet, or maybe even a divorce, or it could also be loss of your job or your financial security, your health, or your physical abilities. I mean, it could be any range of things that it's something that you didn't want to happen that has the potential to negatively impact your life if you let it.
Yeah, those disruptions that we do not want. And
Yes.
in many ways, personal, professional, and literal.
And never at a good time.
Yeah,
Never.
never a good time for a disruption. Though sometimes good comes out of those. So tell us, Julia, what is a storm that you've walked through in your life that you really identify as an it, as you said?
Yeah, and I'm going to go really deep here, Annie. The most difficult storm that I have ever walked through was 12 years ago. My husband took his own life. And I had had many storms that I had walked through prior to that. But that is absolutely the most devastating, that to lose everything all at once in a split second, including your sense of innocence and naivety and confidence and security and sense of safety and belonging and connectedness, in addition to many other things. That's certainly takes the top spot for any storm I've had in my life.
Yeah. And I forgot to say, nothing's off limits, because we have found people really have brilliant, beautiful, tragic stories to share. And yet, as hard as those are, there's lessons in them that help our listeners. So thank you for being vulnerable and authentic. I'm so sorry for that loss. I unfortunately have lost 2 family members, a brother and a nephew, to suicide. And so when we think about tragic or sudden death, that is horrible. When we add on that layer of suicide that can leave so much confusion and what ifs and all of these other pieces, it's another layer of loss. And as you demonstrated and explained, loss comes in layers, right? Loss of belonging, loss of innocence. It's not like, oh, I just lost that, let me deal with that and get on. No, it's layered. In any loss has it. So when you think of that season in your life, and of course, grief is an ongoing season and a lifelong journey of healing. But when you think of it, what was something in the midst of that really hard season? How did you stay hopeful and keep going on the hardest and devastating days?
Sure. And I guess I want to make sure and clarify that even though I can share the strategies of how I stayed hopeful and keep going, it was, yes, definitely a journey. And I still carry the loss of my husband with me. But I don't carry and live in these feelings of grief and depression and sadness and anxiety and no hope. And I have to be honest, whenever any it happens in my life, the first thing I do is I feel like I just want to quit. I just want to give up. I just want to be done.
Yeah.
But what I realized is that's just the first. There's something more beyond that. And some of the things that I did, I learned really, really quickly that in order to give myself more hope or more something positive so that I don't continue that downward spiral was to give myself something to look forward to. Even if it was just meeting somebody for a 5 or 10 minute walk at 30 minutes later in the day, or even if it was just getting outside and having some fresh air, or listening to some upbeat music, even if I didn't want to and didn't feel like it, I forced myself to put on something. And I would say one of the biggest keys for me was doing whatever I could to get out of my head and that continual thinking about it and into my heart to do something else for someone. And one of the things that I found the easiest, and when I share this with people, I say, look, it doesn't take a lot of time and it can take no money. I have a lot of vases that I've gotten flowers over the years. I'm a saver. I have them in my garage. And every time I would walk in my garage, drive into my garage, I'd see all these vases sitting on my shelf. And what I decided to do one morning, I thought, they make me sad when I look at them because they had flowers that people sent me. Why don't I do something good with them? I have a yard with flowers in it. And I picked flowers, put them in the vase, and I set the vases on random people's porches that I don't even know. And it just made me feel really good to do something for someone. And I recognized the more I can get out of my head in that churning of what if and if only, and I shouldn't have said this or I should have done that, and that accountability and that guilt and that blame in whatever it has happened, when I can get into my heart and start looking at, can I do something for someone else? It's amazing how it makes me feel better. It makes me think up, feel up, look up, and start to look forward.
Yeah, I love that. You said a lot of great stuff there. Some that I want to highlight is, I remember when the hurricane hit, people said, do something normal and do something comforting every day. Do something normal and comforting. So I love that. And you kind of said, I wanted to have something to look forward to. The smallest of things could bring me joy, could keep me hopeful and moving forward. Also, one of the things I love to remind people is when we want to be hopeful, look back to look forward. And you do that so brilliantly, but then you took it one step further. You looked back and you saw all these vases of love and flowers and encouragement that had been sent to you. And then you took that and you paid it forward, which I think is such a big part of healing. And like you also said, it doesn't mean it's not still hard. It doesn't mean you live in and sit in and soak in the hardness, but it still means you have hard days, right? But when we get out of ourselves, and no matter how challenging our circumstances, two things I know to be true. One, somebody else always has it worse. And two, when I do for others, it brings joy to me. So I think you said a lot of different pieces in that are such great reminders for our listeners. When you are sitting in and stuck in a storm, in a painful time in your life, as hard as it is. Also, Julie, you said I didn't always feel like it. And that's such a big part of what I teach is we might not always feel like doing the good, healthy stuff or the hopeful stuff or the happy stuff. But if we do it, we'll be better off because of it. So now I want to kind of go back to that season and ask you, how about health? I think of health in 7 different areas. And when we get a blow, a loss, a storm, we can kind of lose track of anything healthy in our lives. So how did you get back to or stay grounded in health as you went through the immense grief initially? And again, a lifelong journey of healing from that. So what were some tips on how you stayed healthy? What did you do for yourself during that season?
Sure. Well, it wasn't easy at first because I want to make sure and acknowledge that not being alone and not feeling alone is a real critical piece, even though, in this, it was probably more alone than anyone I've ever had just because of my own feelings, right? Whether it was guilt or blame or shame or accountability or all of the depression, the sadness, the questions of why I don't understand, but started to realize very quickly. And my daughter was instrumental in helping me with this, that, I have to eat, even if I don't feel like it. I have to get up. I have to actually continue to engage. And it was hard at first. I didn't want to. I literally was hopeless and helpless. I didn't want to do anything. But I started to realize when I thought about it, is that there is something that I can get from this in a way that maybe I can help someone. And so I literally started to reframe it from this is terrible, this is awful, poor me, this is horrible, I don't want to live anymore, to wait a minute, is there something that I can learn from this? Is there something that I can do to help someone else? Because I'm not the only one that's experienced this, but I might be somebody that can help someone else who's experiencing it. Because what I noticed is that we all get stuck. It's amazing to me. We get stuck in these feelings of grief and sadness and depression when something happens that we don't want to happen. But why don't we ever get stuck in those feelings of happiness and joy when something happens that we want to happen,
Yeah.
right? Those are short-lived. And so really started looking at this and made a conscious decision, Annie, that just because something happened that we didn't want to happen, this death of my husband and those overwhelming feelings of grief, they're not a package deal. Just because it happened doesn't mean I have to live in feelings of grief the rest of my life, any more than I get to live in the feelings of happiness and joy the rest of my life. And so it was really looking at these things of making sure that I eat, making sure that I breathe when I start to feel that overwhelming sense, and started doing things that I recognized would make me feel better, like listening to music or getting outside and feeling fresh air and helping someone else every single time. Even if I just open the door for somebody when I'm walking into a grocery store, it started to make me feel better. And one time I remember a turning point for me was I didn't feel like it was okay to smile. I didn't feel like it was okay to even feel like I might have thought something was funny. And the first time I remember I smiled at someone, and the feeling of guilt and everything, when they smiled back at me, I recognized, wait a minute, that's okay. Maybe I just gave them a gift that they wouldn't have today. So, I mean, these are little things, but they make monumental differences in your mental health and in your energy and in your ability to get just one more moment of momentum that maybe I can move forward and move forward stronger, not in this debilitated state.
Yeah, good words. One thing you said right away, which I think is so important, and well, two parts to it. One, you said you had a daughter, you knew you have a daughter, so you had a support system by another person, and you listened when you didn't want to. Once again, and especially when we're going through heavy grief, we can feel like I can't sleep and eat, and the survivor's guilt of I can't be happy or laugh. I remember when my brother took his life that. I remember people were laughing and talking, and I was like, what is wrong with you? Do you know what just happened? Like, stop the world. And yet, when you can get to a healthy enough point of saying, not only is it okay for other people to laugh, it's okay for me to laugh.
Yes.
It's okay for me to live. And it took me, I think, 24 years before I decided after my brother died, instead of being sad around those anniversaries, that I would live twice, that I would live in joy and bravery, not only for myself, but for him. Plus, you reminded us some very tactical that are so important is that you got fresh air, you got music, and we can never say it enough that no matter how much we're hurting and no matter how hard life is, and it will take a moment. You can't always do this the day after you lose someone tragic, but to do something for someone else is not only healthy for our own mental health, but it frees us and it brings us joy. And so it's so important.
Yes.
Somebody wrote,
One of the things that really made a difference for me was a mind shift from this, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, recognizing that there's 3 different places we can be in. You can't do it, you won't do it, or you don't know how to do it. And what I really was saying is, I'm not ready to do it yet. It's not that I can't, it's that I'm not ready. And that's okay. And instead of beating myself up, feeling like I should be, right? Because then I shoulded myself into so many things, to recognize it's okay to just be in that state of be, but only long enough that I can then do something productive with it. And so recognizing it really wasn't that I can't do it. It's that I wasn't ready to do it. And we all are ready at different times. And
right.
some people's timeline is shorter than others. And we can't compare ourselves to others. It's whatever the timeline is that's right for us is the one that is right for us and the one we need to take, no matter what else anybody is telling us about it's been too long or how can you do that so soon.
Right.
Your timeline is the one that's right for you.
Either journey, which is a ironic and funny thing about humans, will say, oh, you're dating too fast. Oh, you're not dating fast enough. Oh, you're still sad about your child, losing your child. Oh, you should be sadder about, you shouldn't have.
Yes.
I think people like to tell us. So I always encourage people, let's not, when we get the privilege to support, to walk alongside someone, let's not should on them. Let's not shame them, and let's not save them. let's support them on their journey. And
Yes.
so we don't get to decide, oh, you should do this or you shouldn't. We don't should on them. We don't shame them and we don't save them. We encourage them and support them on their journey. And so I love what you're
No,
saying. How about
no,
happiness? How did you find your smile and laughter again? And how has that evolved? What brings you happiness, Julia? And especially as you going through this season.
yes. Actually, I am powered by passion and purpose to do something to help someone else in their life. And when I was really able to shift this from the why me to why not me, and there's so many other people, maybe I can help somebody with this. Maybe I can use it for good. Maybe there is a purpose that can come from it that will make a difference in the world and make a difference in other people's lives. And so for me, I get up every morning thinking there is one person that I might be able to help. Just spend 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day less in these feelings of hopelessness and sad and depression, anxiety, and kind of slogging through the day, fogging a mirror, which really is just an existence. I mean, we need life in our life to live. And it's a big difference when you actually recognize, you know what, there is something more I can do, and there's something that I can learn from this and use it to my advantage. And it makes you stronger. It makes you more resilient. It makes you more determined. But more importantly, it makes you more empathetic. It makes you more compassionate. It makes you more understanding, and it really makes you love life more. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but for me, it was really all about, this is purposeful. And I'm passionate about it, as you can probably tell, to be able to make a difference in the world. There is something that I can do with this that actually honors him at the same time that is helping somebody else and literally maybe making the world a better place.
Yeah.
And that's where I get it from.
I love that because I teach people how to find their purpose and their passion because of their pain.
Yes.
And I think there's a formula and people are like, oh, what's your purpose? Is it your job? Is it your family? I'm like, let's look at your story and I will help you. And then you will have so much passion behind it. So exactly that, Julia, I love that part of your happiness and joy is that you've taken this pain that could curl us up in a ball, make us cry the rest of our lives and make us bitter and think, why me? There was a cartoon many years ago. I thought it was Ziggy, but somebody recently told me they think it was Hager. And he's looking up at God saying, why me? And God's looking down saying, why not? And I said, I have never been one to say, why me? And I've gone through a lot of stuff, but I've always thought when I was blessed, why me? And it's like a shift in perspective. Like people think nothing bad should happen to me because I'm a good person. But the reality is, but challenges happen for all of us and to all of us. And so what do we do with them matters. So what is, if you look back at that season, is there anything you would have done differently or changed than what you did? And there's no judgment, there doesn't have to be, but is there anything that you look back and think, I wish I would have known, or I wish I would have done when I lost my husband?
You know what? I've actually thought a lot about that. And one of the things I recognize is that I've given myself the grace to know that I was exactly where I needed to be when I was there for as long as I needed to be, and not wishing, if you will, oh, I should have gotten through that sooner, or I should have not spent so long sad or so long isolated. And if I could have done something different, I certainly would have. But what I can say is, looking back on it, I recognize that every moment was purposeful and needed, because that's where I needed to be at that moment in time. And so for me, I guess one of the things that I wish I would have really grasped onto and believed sooner than I could was that there is more beyond where I currently am. I got stuck in this fog of, this is all there is. This is as good as my life is going to get. This is how I'm always going to feel. And to recognize, no, there's more beyond where you currently are. You just can't see it yet. But trust and believe, just like every other I've been through in my life. I was hit head on by a drunk driver when I was 18. I should have died, right? I learned from that. There is more beyond that 18-year-old being critically injured in a car accident, right? What happens with that? So that trust and that belief of knowing there is something more beyond where I currently am, even if I can't feel it or see it yet, to trust and know it's there. And we have so many examples of life in that, and yet we forget that. And I think the other thing that I would say is, I wish I would have earlier, and I guess I do have one. I wish I would have earlier recognized that every time I added the words "to me," when I told my story, when somebody talked about it, I continually made myself a victim, and really got out of that much more quickly. That no, this didn't happen to me. It happened in my life. Stuff just happens, and it's not fair or unfair or good or bad or right or wrong. It's the circle of life. things happen to people, and things happen in life, right? And these happen in my life, and they're no worse or better than something that happened in someone else's life. And that little shift of, no, this is what happened in my life, literally for me started me on the path of not feeling like a victim. Oh, this is what can I do, is no, this happened in my life. What can I do with it instead of what happened to me from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that really leads to the next question. So that's great. Really thinking about what lessons have you learned, and do you have a specific story of how you have taken the wisdom and exactly what you just said and all of this and used it and paid it forward to help someone else? Do you have a story of some of the pain that you've been through, but how you used it as fuel, passion, purpose to pay forward to serve another person? Do you have a story?
Sure. Sure. I mean, one of the things that I do is I actually seek out people when I can sense or feel and let them know that I'm there. And I try and be vulnerable with them first. And then I just sit and be quiet and ask them, can you tell me your story? Or would you like to share part of your story with me? And that human connection is so big. And for me, that's one way to give back. The other thing that I did, and I can't say that I would recommend this to anybody, but I felt really compelled to share my story to let other people know it's really okay, no matter what has happened in your life, no matter what you're going through, to know that it's okay that you've experienced that, and there's more beyond that. So really expressing gratitude by leaning into other people and connecting with them. And what I've recognized is the more that I share my story, the more people feel a little bit lighter that, number one, they're not alone. And number two, there's people that will come alongside them and lock arms with them and recognize that, yes, I hear you, I see you, I know that you're there, you still belong, you still fit in the world. And I think that's so important for us to know, because when something happens you didn't want to happen, and I don't care what it is, I got fired from my job, we all of a sudden feel like we don't fit in the world anymore. I just got divorced, somebody dumped me, I just got bullied, I just lost my house, I just went bankrupt, I just got accused of something. I mean, we always feel like we don't fit in the world anymore because we don't fit that mold. And the irony is the only place the mold is in this imaginary audience in our head. It's really not a mold. And just really trying to lean in, and those small little acts that don't cost anything, to me, I think have paid the biggest dividends. I mean, I like to tell a story of, there's an angel tree in the lobby of a store or of a church, and just knowing that there's something there that you can help somebody, that to me is just giving back. That gratitude is something that I look at and say, yes, I've had a lot of loss and trauma and tragedy and adversity, but there's also been a lot of amazing, positive connection and success moments and uplifting moments. And we can start to make more of those happen if we're intentional about it.
Yeah, for sure. I think I agree with all of that. I'm all about gratitude and generosity, taking your gratitude one step further and asking how you can serve other people. And sometimes out of adversity, sometimes I'm like, I can't really find the silver lining. And I know there's always a silver lining. How do I find it? And what I find is that I have gained compassion and empathy for other people's stories. I love that you said, it doesn't matter. I identify these as storms. So it doesn't matter if it's a category 1 or a category 5 storm. We all have adversity in our life, and we have a choice to be compassionate toward other people in their journey and in their storm. And sometimes when I'm working with speakers, I'll say, good to share part of your story, but I love what you said. So when I speak, I try to weave my story through my message, but really tell the audience's story more than mine, even though they don't really know that, but they find it later. Like, I felt like you told my story, or I felt like you knew me. But you said something beautiful. You said, I share a piece of my story, and then I get quiet and I listen. And when I speak, what I find is when I leave space afterwards to meet people at my book table or to say, here's my email, so many people will write me their story. And so often, whether they are 20, 40, 60, or 80, will say, I've never shared with anyone.
Yes.
Anyone could relate. I've been holding this in. I've been hurting alone. Thank you for making it safe. So I love that you remind people.
Yes. I mean, one of the things that I've done to give back is I've written a book, and it just came out in January. I'm donating all the proceeds to charity, but in the back of the book, I have my email address, and I genuinely ask people, please share your story with me. And what I have found is so many people have emailed me their story and they say the exact same thing. I haven't shared this with anybody yet. I also have decided to share my story on stages, and the number of people that come up after I'm finished speaking and share their story with me and hug me. And what I recognize is they now feel a sense of that community of connection, that, you know what, you're just like me. And I reassure them that no matter what story I share about me in my life, whatever the biggest thing that's happened in your life is just as impactful. As they say, oh gosh, my stuff's not as bad as yours. No, there's no relative comparativeness. And we try to do that, right? We try and rationalize it. And I think what that does is it takes away our sense of humanness, and our sense of it's okay to feel how I feel, that nobody is, mine is not worse than yours. Whatever it is that's been the worst thing that's happened in your life is just as impactful, and give them permission to be in the space they are. Don't feel guilty about how you're feeling, right? That's okay. And take off the boxing gloves, right? I mean, there's enough stuff out there that is challenging in life. It shouldn't be what we're seeing in the mirror.
Well, and it's so fascinating to me as you're talking. I'm thinking about, think about how many people walk alone. I came home from this trip and I said, so many people are wounded, deeply wounded from a trauma, tragedy, history, accident, abuse, whatever it is, that are walking around trying to hold it together. And just the physical posture of holding in is exhausting for every part of our body, and it can make us literally sick. And so having that compassion for everybody has a story, whether they share it or not. I always say I get nervous around perfect people because I'm pretty messy and I'm kind of vulnerable and authentic and out there. But at least I'm true. And when I'm having a sad day, I say, you know what, I'm sad today, but you know what, today I'm brilliantly excited, and I'm blessed more than many, and I'm bruised more than many, but it doesn't matter. It's not a comparison. It's about showing up with generous and a grateful heart every day. Is there one last story or lesson or message that I know that we have listeners right now that are hurting, Julia? I know people are grieving people with cancer. I know people are grieving people that are sick, that are dying, that are diagnosed, that they've lost to suicide, to addiction, miscarriages that people carry around and never tell anybody, stillborn deaths, births, job loss, all those things that you said, financial loss, relationship loss. What is one word of encouragement or story, a thought that you want to tell our listeners and say, hey, I just want you to know?
Yes. And I would say, I just want you to know that no matter what it is that you've experienced, no matter how long ago, there is something more that is beyond where you currently are. And I promise it's there. And please just know that that as you want to move forward stronger, the answers will come to you. And a one small little step is progress. And please know that these cliches, it's not that time heals all wounds. I've heard that so many times, or, you know, this is for some greater, where this is meant to be, or, you know what, ignore all of those types of cliches, because you are successful just because you're still here. And don't buy in to that, the cultural or society that, you know, failure is not an option, or, you know, just get back up the mat one more time. No, this is about taking one small step. Practice is not perfect. Practice is progress. And so just practice one thing of self-grace for yourself, and know that there's more beyond where you currently are. I promise, just like every other storm that you've been through, no matter category 1 or category 5, you move through every single one of those storms as well. Trust and have faith that there's something more beyond this. And that will give you that little glimmer of hope to take that one more breath to keep going. And I promise each breath with you take, you'll move forward just a little bit stronger. And you will look back one day and you'll recognize, oh my gosh, look how far I've come. And that will fuel you forward.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Julia. Just a reminder to our listeners, if you have questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, feel free to write them in the comments below, whether on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and myself or Julia or both of us will get back to you and encourage you on your journey, as we are all on a journey through this fascinating thing called life that is so beautiful and brilliant some days, and tragic and tormenting others. Julia, if people want to reach out to you and stay connected with you, what is the best way for them to connect?
Probably on LinkedIn with my name. You have to put the A in there, Julia A Nicholson, but please have them connect with me. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I will respond and I will get back to you. And I want to make sure you know that you're not alone on your journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to our listeners to being with us one more week of H3 TV, where we bring hope, health, and happiness, ideas to get through the storms or the its in your life.
Yes.
Thanks and take care.
Thanks, Annie.
You're welcome.